here from On a Stamp Page. I'm super excited to be sharing with you the beautiful products that we're using this month at Crafters Castle for our Crafters Castle Challenge. Our sponsor this month, as all months, is TaylorMade Cards for You, and this month we're getting to use the gorgeous English Garden bundle. And it's this bundle that comes with a whole bunch of papers that are patterned with English Garden. This is technically like a journal cover, so there's pieces to make a journal with all of these things. And then there's like an inside binding type page. There are these pages with fun vintage images, and the kind of ledger paper, and more of the ledger paper with the beautiful butterflies and florals in the background. There's also this one that's more masculine feel, that just has the stamps. Then there's also these darling, and please excuse the lines, that's my printer, that's not the images. These gorgeous seed packets. It's really hard to see, but you can cut out these seed packets. And then there's a couple of ephemera pages that I'm just in love with. This one has a fun pocket down in here, and then 2 guest checks. I'll be using these guest checks in my project today. And then this gorgeous 4 square paper, which I will also be using in my project today. It's got the fun, more simple floral with a more white background, and then this gorgeous, like, I call it a mossy background. I know it's probably not moss, it's more ferns, but I think it looks kind of mossy and I love the colors. Then there's also this one, which I'll also be using. It's a double-sided one, and it has this nice vintage like wallpaper feel, and then that same mossy background. Let me turn it this way because I think this is the way it goes, with the beautiful florals over it. And then this gorgeous ephemera page that has all sorts of different things. It's got the labels, which I'll be using some of these things. It's got this beautiful butterfly pocket, more butterflies. I love butterflies, so this just makes me happy to see all these butterflies and a little vintage image, and then this nice strip that you can use on the binding of a journal. So let me show you what I have created with this beautiful set. I have really been thinking about my grandparents lately, and I wanted to do something to kind of honor them. And they've all passed away, and so I thought that for Valentine's Day it might be fun to make my parents a little thing to remember them by. So what I've done is I've taken a tin and I've used some Mod Podge to Mod Podge some gorgeous elements on it, and then on the inside are pictures of my grandparents. These are my paternal grandparents. And I've added some papers and things like that from the kit. I've done up these little clothespins with the papers from the kit, and added some other stuff with Mod Podge and things like that. So this is the one for my paternal grandparents that I'm going to give to my father for for Valentine's Day. And so today I'm going to share with you the one that I want to make for my maternal grandparents, and it's going to be a similar theme, just a little bit different. So the things that I'm using, I'm going to be using a tin, and I actually pre-cut a lot of my pieces, and I love this because this project would be so good to take to a crop or something to work on, because these tins hold your little pieces, and I believe I got these from Stampin' Up! A while back, so I don't know if they're available, but I'm sure you could find something very similar on a craft website or something like that. Anyway, so inside I have all of my pieces already cut. I have the inside pieces that I want to use, and that vintage wallpaper page that I'm going to use pieces of. I decided to use the blue guest check because on this one I used the pink one, so we're going to be using the blue one. I've got my pictures of my maternal grandparents and my maternal grandparents and my mom and I when I was a baby. And I've got this beautiful butterfly already cut out and some other little elements in here. The one thing that I did not already cut out, because I wanted to show you it on the page, was this little piece right here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, and I will be right back. All right, I am back. I've cut my little label. I forgot to share with you, these are the little captions that I made, and all I did was I used my computer to type these up in the fonts that I wanted, and I put them into a table so that I knew how to cut them nicely. And so I've got those, and then I've also got these 2 little clothespins that I'll show you how I change up. And The first thing though we need to do is, I forgot to tell you, I'm going to be using the beautiful book cover paper for the front of my tin. So what I do is I take this and I actually flip it over on the back, and I lay my tin face down on here, and I'm just going to trace around it with a pencil. And it's okay if it's a little bit over the sides, because when you Mod Podge things on, it gives it that nice seal. But what I like to do is, so I've got it traced out, and I'm just going to cut a little bit on the inside because that way it will fit better on the tin. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So I'm kind of using the inside line of my tracing to cut around, so that when it gets put onto the tin, like I said, it will fit on better than if I had cut right on the line. And you can do this, or you can sand your edges if you want to. I'm not a huge fan of sanding, but if you wanted to sand your edges instead once you get it onto the tin, you could also do that. That gives it a more distressed look. I don't really like the sound of sandpaper on paper, so I'm not a huge fan of that, but it is an option for anybody who wants to do that. So now that I've got this cut out, I'm going to take it and I'm going to start by adding the Mod Podge directly onto the tin. And the reason I'm going to put it directly on the tin and not on the back of the paper is because that gives me the full coverage that I need on the area that I'm putting the paper on. Sometimes it's hard to get the edges of the paper and have them really stay down, and I've just found that doing it this way makes it easier. So I'm just going to paint a nice semi-thin coat all over the front of my tin, making sure I get all the edges. And the awesome thing about Mod Podge is it stays kind of wet for a while, and also it's easy to clean off your fingers and things like that. You can just rub them together. It's just like white glue. So I love using Mod Podge. And then I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to lay it right on top here and get it into position. That's nice, and it's laying right flat on there. And then I'm going to take Mod Podge and I'm going to paint over the entire cover to give it a nice varnished look. The other thing I super love about Mod Podge is it's pretty forgiving. So if you need to reposition things, you're able to, as long as you don't leave it on here really long. And then I love how quickly it dries, because if you don't use too much, then when you're doing this project, you can just keep going on. If you start to see that it's bubbling like it is right here, just take your paintbrush on the edge and kind of push it. And if that's not helping, you can kind of shove your brush edges down in there, and you can use your finger to push it down and get the air bubble out, and then just go over that area with Mod Podge again. It's fantastic. It's just so easy to work with, especially with paper. So now that that has a nice coat, I'm going to start doing my layers. So the next layer that I'm going to add is my guest check. And this is where I am going to start Mod Podging on the back of the paper instead of the tin, because I don't know exactly how this is going to go. But I'm going to try and get all the edges. If I don't, it'll be okay, because like I said, Mod Podge is very forgiving, and you can reposition. You can even take it off without it ripping, usually pretty quickly. And I'm going to angle that right there. Ooh, and that's sticking so nicely because I didn't wait for my other piece to dry. You can wait for things to dry in between when you're doing this, but I've found that when you just keep going, if it's still tacky, it's so much easier to get your extra pieces on. The other thing I always do is I try to make sure that the last time I go over with a brush, I'm always going the same way. So if I want my lines to go that way, I go that way. But for this, I'm wanting it to go lengthwise. So there I've got my guest check. And then the next piece is going to be my little label. But I want it to say the word love. And so I have my stamp here with the word love. And I'm actually going to use StazOn ink to stamp it, because StazOn ink, when you use it, and then you Mod Podge it, this will not run. This dries quickly and it's permanent. So I'm gonna take my StazOn ink, which comes with a little covering that you need to take off. And I'm gonna ink up my stamp. Oh, and StazOn ink comes in different colors. It doesn't just come in black. I just happen to have my black and I like it with this vintage feel. And then I'm just gonna take this and position my love where I want it, press down evenly. There I've got my word love. Get my ink out of the way. And then I really don't have to wait for it to dry too long. I'm just gonna take my brush, get some Mod Podge on the back of this, put it, I think since the flower was on the other side, I think on this one I'm gonna put it over here instead of here, because you see how on this one the flower was over here, but this one the flower's over here, and I don't wanna cover it up as much. So we're gonna do this a little bit differently than the other one. And I'm gonna Mod Podge over that. And do you see? I love it. The StazOn is not running at all. If you used a water-based ink, I don't know that it would not run. So that's why I love that StazOn ink. And I'm gonna make sure to go over it this way. And as you can see, I'm kind of, well, hopefully you can see, I'm kind of getting a buildup here around the edges. So I'm just gonna take this brush and kind of pull that up and then brush it down. So it's not gonna have a weird raised edge there. And then the next thing I'm gonna add is my butterfly, but I don't know if you can see on here, this butterfly is also Mod Podge. Do you see how it has that glossy shine? So before I add it, and as you can see it's dimensionalized, before I add it, I'm actually gonna take it and I'm gonna Mod Podge over the front. And then I'm gonna Mod Podge over the back so that it becomes more of a varnished accent. And I'm actually gonna set this aside to dry for just a second so that I can rub this off my hands, but also so that I can add my little accents, my little cork heart, and my little gem. I'm gonna take my little cork pieces, and I'm gonna take the little heart, and I'm gonna add it right here. And then I decided for this one, instead of doing white stones, I wanted to kind of give it this little Aurora Borealis look. So I'm gonna use these stones to accent it. And I'm gonna put this little jewel right here. And now I think my butterfly, even though it's not 100% dry, it is ready to add to this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some adhesive foam, double-sided adhesive foam, and I'm gonna cut a few pieces that are small, and I'm gonna add them to the back of the butterfly and then add that to the tin so that it gives that little tiny bit of dimension, but not a ton of dimension. So my 4 pieces of foam right here on my butterfly, ready to go onto the tin. And all I need to do is take the backs off, and then I'm gonna take my little butterfly and I'm gonna add it right here. Oh, and I love it. So that's the front. Isn't that beautiful? I love the blue and the orange together. So now that the front is done, it's pretty dry. It's still a little tacky, but it's dry enough for me to be able to go in and do the inside. So I already have my pieces that I want to put in here, but they don't lie very nicely because the edges of my tin are rounded. So I'm gonna take a corner rounder and I'm gonna round the corners of these papers. Sorry, I was off camera. I'm gonna round the corners of these papers so that they will fit in better into the tins. So as you can see, like this side is having trouble laying flat, but when I put this in with the rounded edges, it's staying flat. I'm okay with there being a silver edge on either side because one side I'm gonna do this fun glitter effect that I'm gonna show you how to do. So I'm okay with that silver edge in there. And so now all I've gotta do is take these and get my Mod Podge again and go ahead and Mod Podge the inside. And yes, I do Mod Podge the whole inside. That way I have enough Mod Podge to where I can work it in exactly where I want it, and I can scoot it around, push it in, and then do my thin layer on top. So now I've got my pieces in here. The next step is adding the glitter. And this is super fun to do, and it's super duper easy. And I think for this one, instead of using the iridescent glitter, I'm gonna use this rose gold glitter. This is chunky glitter that I got from Michael's. It comes in different colors, but I like this rose gold with this type of paper. So all I did to add this glitter was I kind of added a little bit of extra Mod Podge here to the side. And then I'm gonna take my glitter and I'm just gonna pour it in there. Woo! It's trying to escape. And I'm gonna leave that there. And I'm gonna go over to the other side and I'm gonna add some more Mod Podge. And then I'm gonna close it. Yes, it makes a huge mess, but it gives me this really nice look to the edges. And yes, I know there's a ton right here. All you have to do is get a little sponge, wipe it out, and because it's not super wet, you can just kind of scoot it over too if you want to keep it in there, and you just play with it until it looks the way you want it to, and you kind of push it down where you want it to, because the Mod Podge is going to dry glossy. Don't want it on the outside. The Mod Podge is going to dry glossy anyway. And then what I do is I go over it with a thin layer of Mod Podge, and that way it's not escaping anywhere. This side is already drying and it's already going back to that gorgeous shine. So now I'm going to clean up my GRI, my glitter related incident, and I will be back in just a second with the rest of what we're going to do on the inside. All right, so the GRI has been mostly contained. It will not surprise me if I find pink glitter throughout my house for the rest of the week, and on my dog and on my husband, and I just found a piece on me, but you know, it's all good because glitter is important. So I've got my glitter in there, and now I'm going to work on the other inside pieces. So let's take a look at this one. So on the inside, I have my clothespins that are keeping my pictures up. And the reason I like this is because you can take this out and put it back in. And I just like that I can take that out and it's not technically permanent. So the permanent things are the clothespins. And I'm going to show you how I made these clothespins to where they match everything. So I got a bunch of little clothespins on clearance at Michael's a long time ago. But the problem is they come with like this fabric-y paper stuff. But the good thing is it's really pretty easy to remove. I'm going to take off the backings of these clothespins. I say it's easy and then it doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. So I'm going to take off the backings of these clothespins, and it's going to leave me with just the wood. And this will be easy to adhere some paper to, and I'm going to do that to both sides. And then I'm going to do it to the other one as well. And now that I have two clean clothespins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of that wonderful vintage looking wallpaper paper that just goes with any of the patterns in this set, this beautiful English garden set, and I'm going to take some Mod Podge and a smaller brush this time, and I'm going to Mod Podge the back of one of these. Then I'm going to push it right in to the edge and corner of one side of my strip of paper. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. And that is going to glue it in place. I'm going to leave these over to the side for a second. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to take my little labels and I'm going to take more of that vintage looking, oh, look, there's some glitter. That vintage looking paper. Oh my goodness. GRI to the max. And I'm going to use this to mat my little captions with. I've got these two, they are ready to go onto the inside. On this one, I decided to put the pictures catty corner from each other. I like the way that that looks, and I'm going to do the same thing on this one. I'm going to take some Mod Podge. I'm going to put it on the back. Ooh, look, piece of glitter. And this is the one that's going to go with the picture of them with me, and I'm going to put that here. Position it where I want to. Love how the Mod Podge lets you slide things around. Grab some more, put a nice layer over the top, then make sure that my brush strokes go up and down with everything else. Take my other one, and I'm going to put Mod Podge down the back of that. I'm going to go right down in here, kind of move that around, push it down, up and down stroke so that it matches everything else. And as you can see, as this Mod Podge is drying, the glitter is going back to being shiny. And I'm going to put one more coat on because I do not want this glitter getting everywhere in my parents' house. I want this to be something that they don't feel scared to open. So now I've got my 2 captions in there, and I've been letting my clothespins dry. And now all I'm going to do, since it's right up against the edge, all I have to do is trim up the top and then down the side. And then I've got a clothespin that matches the rest of my paper. Do the same on this other one. So there are my 2 clothespins. The next thing that I did to kind of add a little bit of pizzazz to the clothespins was I added some of these cute hearts and flowers that are the cork. But before I do that, I'm actually going to hot glue them into the tin so that when I decorate them, I don't have to wait for them to dry before they're already in the tin. So my hot glue is ready to go. So I'm going to start. I've already put my picture on here because it's going to help me see where I need to glue this in place. So I've got my picture in there. I'm going to take my hot glue, run a nice line down there, and I'm going to kind of center this over that caption. And then I'm going to take this one, which is already on, the photo's already on. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to run a nice line of hot glue. And then I'm going to kind of center this under the caption. So now all I have left to do is to add my little accents. So I've got my little cork elements here, and I'm going to add, let me show you this again. So I added some little hearts and rhinestones here, and then I added some cork to there. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to add a little cork heart here. This is actually a medium cork heart, and I'm going to add a medium cork here, jewel here, and a little jewel there. And then I don't have enough hearts to do heart, flower, heart, so these ones are actually going to be flower, heart, flower. So when I'm putting elements on, I always try to do the center one first so that I can move it if I need to. That wasn't quite centered. So I'm going to put that right in the center, push it down, and then I'm able to see how I can then center my little flowers right on there. I'm going to add some blue liquid pearls to the center of the flowers to make them look like they have little centers. I'm using blue because it coordinates with the blue flowers on the outside, and I'm just kind of filling that little well that the hole in the cork element leaves and building it up just a little bit. And then I'm going to take some stickles. This is the color Crystal, and I'm just going to kind of jazz up my hearts. Here's the the finished inside. I'm gonna leave it open for a little while to finish drying. So that is my completed project. I hope you enjoyed it. This is something that I'm hoping my parents will either keep in a special place or will have open and displayed somewhere in their home. I feel like this is such a great gift to give for Valentine's Day, but it would also be so nice for Mother or Father's Day if someone had a parent who has passed on. I'm so grateful that I'm able to make these beautiful creations with tailor-made Cards for You products. The English Garden bundle was exactly what I needed to create such a lovely Valentine gift. And I hope that you head over to TaylorMade Cards for You and see this. If you'd like to win part of this bundle, join us at Crafters Castle and enter our challenge, and you will be in the drawing for this part of this beautiful kit. And that's all I have for you today. So until next time, hugs and happy crafting, friends. Bye.